Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly shir on the Torah of recovery with the light revealed, where we draw the light of the Torah onto the path of recovery and we reveal the path of recovery within the Torah. Meaning to say, the ultimate purpose is to draw out the wisdom of recovery for those who don't feel that they need recovery so that they can benefit from the wisdom of recovery, and to draw the light of spirituality into recovery so that those on a process of actual recovery can benefit from the spiritual illumination. The Zohar HaKadosh says, and the Mittler Rebbe bases an entire kuntris, an incredible treatise on this notion of Mashiach Asya La'asve Tzadikaya B'tiyufta, that Mashiach Tzidkenu arrives in order to teach the truly righteous how to return in tshuva. Meaning to say, B'makom shebalei tshuva oimdim ein tzadikim gemurim yochelim la'amod, in the place that the repentant individual, the one who returns, stands, the truly righteous are incapable of standing. Because, as the Zohar explains, the person who is moving up back from the bottom is going to be infused with a new force and an intensification of spirit that someone who never fell will not have the ability to experience. And the goal of Mashiach is to teach those who have never experienced the descent and the urgency that comes about in the ascent afterwards, that they too should learn the secret of the urgency of the ascent, even though they haven't gone through the descent. That's the element of teaching the wisdom of recovery to the tzaddikim, of bringing the light of recovery and to reveal it in the Torah itself, and to show how the Torah speaks to that place. And then the second goal, which is also the first goal, both are inherently connected with one another, is to draw the light of the Torah into the path of recovery, to show those who are along the path of recovery that each and every step and effort that they place in the development of self in accordance with the principles and 12 principles which are associated with the world of Malchus, and the 12 cows that held up the bottom floor of the Beis Hamikdash, and the 12 steps that it takes to get to a place. These 12 elements, the path of recovery becomes an amazing receptacle, a vessel that holds the light of Pnimius HaTorah. So it's a crisscross. The light of recovery is being expressed into the Torah, and the light of the Torah is being expressed into recovery to reveal the secret of Derech Eretz Shekadma Torah, that the path towards developing oneself, and the secret of Malchus, which are the 12 steps that hold up the lowest pace in the Beis Hamikdash, which are the Yud Beis Bakarim, Keneged the Yud Beis Shvatim, Keneged the Yud Beis Sha'arim, that were developed by Shlomo HaMelech in his wisdom. That is the basis for the Malchus. And once we have the Derech Eretz Shekadma, then we can draw down the Torah into the Derech to reveal how both are fundamentally connected with each other. And so Be'ezras Hashem, in this week's Parsha, Parshas Vayeitzei, we encounter a fundamental element of what it means to be a human being. And it's encountered by Yaakov Avinu when he falls into a deep slumber and encounters the dreamlike state. Ultimately, the state that we're going to be describing is the state of being in a dreamscape, the state of dreaming, but it's not ultimately going to be about the process of dreaming in actuality, which is an unconscious process. Yes, one can do work there, but that's not what we're talking about. We're abstracting the notion of a dream and we're applying it to the reality of our waking consciousness. That in accordance with the tzaddikim, especially the Mei Shiloach and the Sod Yesharim and the Beis Yaakov, to be a human being is to be caught up in the state of a dream, in a state of translation, in a state of a loss of clarity prior to a complete annihilation of clarity, kind of the mixed up, muddled up liminal space wherein there's darkness and light, bi'ir, and that is the place that a person has to be mevarer, clarify the light from within the darkness, and clarify the darkness so that it serves as the proper vessel to hold the light. That's what it means to be in the state of a chalom, to be in a state of battle, as the Ramchal says. The word for battle, is the same osios as the word for chalom, as the word for a dream, because it is a grappling with the congealment of light and darkness that dance together very often, that is being refined in the process of a milchama, in the milchama sayetzer, and it's also taking shape in the process of the chalom. It's taking place in the process of eating when we engage with physicality in this world, which is why lechem and bread, which represents the sustenance that a human being draws down, is also associated with a dream. And the tzaddikim point out that when Mashiach Tzidkenu comes, we're going to come to realize that hayinu kecholmim, we're going to laugh the laughter of the last day, and we'll come to realize that we were like dreamers. Zak tehela gamei shiloach, that every ounce of conscious wakefulness in this world is like a dream that stands at the ready to be interpreted. And it's not by surprise that the first instantiation of Torah Shabbal Peh, Maseches Brachos, which is ultimately answering the question of how does one come to proclaim confidence and faith in God in the depth of the night, Me'em Masai Korin Eshma Ba'arvis, the world of Torah Shval Peh, the world of darkness, the world of concealment, the loss of the lack, the world of the lack of clarity. It's specifically there that out of my ema, out of my anxiety of the nighttime, I come to realize that I have to find God in this place. I have to draw down the power of my higher power. And in the first Masechta of Shas, which is Brachos, which is also the letters of Bo Keser, the light of the crown is there, the highest level of Ratzon, because ultimately the imaginative principles at the heart of the dream, which is the Cholem, which is the Nakuda that rests above the Vav, which hints towards that which is transcendent to my consciousness, yet hovering above, that's the place of the dream, and that's the place of the openings towards prophecy, but it's also something that could descend down into the feeling of a milchama. And so when we deal with brachos, bo keser, and we go down to the very depths of brachos, we go to try and find what is the blessing of descending down into exile. That's the question of Torah Shval Peh. That's the question of recovery. What blessing will I find when I descend down into the deep, dark, difficult terrain of the effort-oriented process of refining myself from the inside out and from the outside in? What is there to gain? And when we descend down into the depths of brachos and we come to the goodness that is hidden away, the Parak Tes and Maseches Brachos, the Os Tes, which is Brachos L'Roish Tzadik, that ultimately the bracha is the goodness that is hidden away in the Os Tes. The Os Tes represents the vessel, and also the bending crown of the tippy top of the Tes hints to the fact that there's something hidden within, to the degree that the Meshiloach says that every ninth pasuk deserves extra attention because it's holding a secret there. So when we go into the secret of Maseches Brachos, the Parak Tes of Maseches Brachos, what do we find? We find the secret of the dream. We find dream interpretation. We find the opening towards the unconscious and the powerful hermeneutics and thinking processes that Chazal reveal to us in the wisdom of what it means to make shape and develop meaning out of this dreamscape and this concealed place where I don't know which way is up and which way is down. And the dream becomes a fundamental way of orienting ourselves towards consciousness in this world. And Pitron HaChalomos and the possibility of saying yes to our lives and finding healthy narratives, all of this is contained within the process of dreaming in the nature of the Chalom. But before we go into Yaakov Avinu's descent into the nocturnal state of the dreamscape, where it's a loss of clarity for the sake of uncovering a deeper level of clarity that can be found specifically within the lack of clarity itself, we have to look towards the beginning of the Parsha to come to terms with what the basic definition of a dream is in the teachings of the Mikubalim, in particular the Arizal. Because when we look at the beginning of the Parsha, we see Vayeitzei Yaakov mi Be'er Shava v'yelech Harana. Yaakov Avinu is descending down from a place of saturation, from a place of fullness, from a place of fully operating in a state of wakefulness, of awareness, having just processed receiving the blessings from Yitzchak, understanding the need for the utilization of imagination and the freedom of mind to retrieve those brachos. Yaakov Avinu was now forced to descend down into exile. He descends down into that place of Haran, into that place of the misutilization of imagination, which becomes projective resentments, which is the place of anger, frustration, and that's the place of Haron, Haron Af. Yaakov Avinu is leaving a place of saturation and cool, calm, collected wakefulness, and he's descending down into the secret of nighttime. Now, obviously, it's a descent for the sake of an ascent, because what Yaakov Avinu discovers in the descent into the depths of night is the encounter with the secret of tefillah at the heart of night, which is the secret of Arvis, which is the secret of crying out to God and our higher power in the depths of the concealment, in the depths of the nighttime, where the Chalom takes place. But as we begin to see this descent of Yaakov Avinu into this place of opposition and the nighttime and the lack of clarity and the nocturnal state of confusion, so Rashi points out something very powerful, a fundamental Rashi that reveals depths upon depths, which Rashi was working with. That Rashi says on the word Vayeitzei, why does it say that Yaakov left? That it says Yitzias Hatzadik min ha'ir na'aseh roshem. That when a tzaddik, when a righteous individual leaves the town that they were occupying, what remains in their place is an irreducible trace of their original presence, in spite of the fact that they are no longer there. By dint of the fact that they saturated the place with meaning, when they depart from that place, the place is no longer saturated with meaning, but rather it's the inverse. It's saturated with a lack of meaning. And as Rav Tzadok HaKohen Meir Lublin explains, based on this Rashi, that when a person contemplates the apparent lack of of meaning that is left in the trace of the person who was there giving it meaning, by engaging with the deficiency and the lack of meaning, a person comes to a place in their mind where they attach themselves to the original thing that was providing the meaning. So there's an irreducible trace that is left behind anytime something holy is present, but it doesn't reveal itself as such. It reveals itself as the absence of that thing which was here and now is gone. And specifically in descending down into the absence of that thing, being doirish the Roshem, like Rav Tzadok HaKohen Melublin points out, in the language of Chazal, there's the notion of Dorshe Rishumos, those who have to descend down away from the revealed externality of the world, breaking the surface, digging, digging, digging to be Doresh Achar the Roshem, to find the irreducible trace of those things which were here and now they've departed. But instead of getting stuck in that perspective of pessimistic loss, one uncovers the hopeful perspective of the rootedness of the trace, the fact that there's a Roshem that's left. And that Roshem is the contemplation over the apparent absence, because when a person is contemplating apparent absence, as Rav Tzadok points out, then already a person is intuiting to themselves, basing themselves on the true recognition that there is meant to be presence. And if there's meant to be presence and I'm aware of the lack of presence, well, I'm also aware of the presence that should be here. And by being aware of the presence that should be here, by way of spooky action at a distance, I'm actually connecting to the presence that was here, and I'm revealing that it's still here. That's the secret of Yetzias HaTzadik min ha'ir na'asa Roshem. This is, in fact, not only true for tzaddikim and righteous individuals in positive moments in our lives, but this is a replication or a model of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how God, how our higher power created the reality. We understand from our teachers and from the tzaddikim that prior to the creation of the world, all that existed was the all-annihilating, all-saturating, infinite light that was revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinitude. There was no room, so to speak, for anything else. There was no room for separation. There was no room for time. There was no room for constriction, all of which seemed to operate in the polar opposite of the unbridled, unlimited unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite light. As a result, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create a world where there can be otherness, so that God could bestow his goodness upon others and that we can receive it in the best way, which means through the hard-earned process of developing ourselves from within ourselves, which is the secret of recovery. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mitzamsem. He left a vacant space. That's the secret of Yetzias HaTzadik min ha'ir nasa Roshem, the departure of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the infinite space, and the appearance of the Chalal HaPanui, the vacant space, is the secret of the Tzaddik Shel Olam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's leaving and departing and leaving a place there. But that place is not empty. We know that there's no such thing as emptiness. It's something that appears as emptiness. What is it that appears as emptiness? It's God's revelation that he can appear as emptiness. That's a furthering of his fullness. When our higher power enables us to find ourselves in circumstances where we find ourselves devoid of his light, ultimately that just means that it's a furthering of the revelation of his light, because when I overcome the apparent absence of his light and I dig down deeper to reveal the irreducible trace of his light that was always already remaining there, then I come to express HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light and my higher power's light in a deeper way. And so just as when a tzaddik leaves the town, there's a Roshem, there's an irreducible trace that allows us to contemplate the presence by way of absence, so too HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he departed from that vacant space, there's a Rishimu of the Or Ein Sof. There's an irreducible trace of the infinite. And even though it's just a trace of the infinite, we know that the parameters of infinitude are that even if you have the slightest semblance of infinitude, it contains the entirety of infinitude. And that's the joke, that's the laugh, that's the dream that's waiting to be interpreted. The Chalal HaPanui is like falling asleep. HaKadosh Baruch Hu placing the Rishimu and allowing the Rishimu and the trace of infinite light is like the dream of existence, because what the Arizal tells us is that a dream, what's a dream? When a person is in a state of wakeful consciousness, in a place of moichin de gadlus, so then everything is operating in a clarified way, and I'm not questioning what things mean. I'm not being startled by secondary meanings, and I'm not forced to develop a utilization of imagination and fight the concealment so that I force imagination to go back up to the place that it's meant to go in the secret of refining Leia, instead of allowing the dream to be captured by the lower elements of self. Because in that territory of the dreamlike scape, there's always a battle, there's a lochem, because the creativity and the imagination of the dream can expand consciousness to a place of prophecy, and it could also bring the self down into the territories of the habitual states of the body, which is desire, craving, and addiction. So as Rabbi Nachman points out, the dream is always a mixed bag. There's going to be the dream of the malach, and there's also going to be the susceptibility of the dream of a demon. What does that mean? Each and every person has within their mindsets two perspectives, the angelic mindset and the demonic mindset. The angelic mindset, which wants to move forward and elevate elevate and build higher and reveal more and more light of godliness in the world. And that demonic mindset wants to attach itself to that which is most apparent, that which is most immediate, that which is most oriented towards the body itself. And in that place of the battle, that's where the interpretation of the dream, that's where we have to consistently re-narrate our stories to ourselves to see Od Yoter Tov, more and more good in the secret of the Rishimu of the Or Ein Sof. But what a dream is that when wakeful consciousness departs, and Moichin the godless departs, and I'm no longer functioning in a place of clarity, my mind descends into something called Moichin the Katnus. Moichin the Katnus is a constricted mindset. It's when Yaakov Avinu descends from a place of saturation of self, of goodness, not arrogance, but a feeling of an okayness and an all rightness, and descends down into those moments of smallness, which are the charon af, which are anger, resentment, frustration, agitation, resentments, all of the different things that lead us astray into the nightmarish territories of the self when we're not focusing on ourselves properly. And so what happens in a state of slumber is that my moichin, the godless, my expanded consciousness of clarity falls away, and I slide back into a place of moichin the katnus. This is where hello darkness, my old friend comes into the picture, where I'm aware of those beasts of the night that come out and they cry out, and all of those feelings of loneliness, isolation, forlornness, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, agitated, all of those things begin to feel a little bit stronger in the nighttime. And it's specifically there where a person enters into the perspective of moichin the katnus, into a place of concealment of the mind. And that's where a person goes into a process of hibernation, and it's inactivity. That's the name of the game. But there's a secret of the chalom. There's a secret of the dream. The dream is the secret of wakefulness at the heart of slumber. It's the secret of reattaching ourselves to the irreducible trace of Moichin the godless, of expanded consciousness that remains even within the departure of Moichin the godless. Even when I lose my mind, I still maintain my mind. It just takes time to uncover the mindfulness that remains in the mindlessness. When a person digs down deep into the apparent departure of Moichin the godless, and they find themselves wandering into that nighttime, nightmarish territory of the mind in its concealment and in its lack of clarity, we must dig down deep to be searching out the Rishimu of the dream. The dream is the Rishimu of Moichin the godless as it remains even activated in the state of Moichin the katnus. That it's the memory, it's the trace of goodness that continues to exist and imprint itself even in moments of difficulty. And when we attach ourselves to that innermost point of the chalom, and we begin to dream, and we begin to utilize hope, and we begin to remember, and we begin to remember the future, and we begin to remember that this moment won't last, and that this difficulty is not going to last, and that there's a freedom of interpretation, and I am the one who's going to determine the dream, and I'm the one who receives the blessings from the Kohanim to interpret my dream properly, and to see the goodness in my dream, and to be mahapech, and to transform the difficulty of my dream, like the dreams of Yosef, into the secret place of redemption. It's not just that we don't want bad dreams, it's that we're transforming this place of smallness into an incubator for a furthering and a redevelopment of a depth of connectivity. Because when I can find God in the dream, when I can find God in the Rishimu that remains even after the departure of something original, and instead of losing my mind and feeling I've lost everything, I hibernate properly and I lean deeply into the irreducible trace that remains, I come to find that all of the descent and all of the dream and all of the nocturnal reality of the self are all forms of expression of the self. They're not loss of self. They're not falling and no longer being engaged with self. A person must develop the two parts of themselves, the daytime self and the nighttime self, the chalom and the wakeful consciousness. Because when we can find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the dreamlike state, and we can find the sulam mutzav artza v'rosha magia shemaima, that to be a human being is a mixed bag, and sometimes I'm going to be in moichin the katnus, and sometimes I'm going to be in moichin the godless. Sometimes I'm going to know what's going on, sometimes I'm not going to know what's going on. Ultimately, when I realize that hayinu kecholmim, that we're all like this extended position of a dream, then I own myself and I give myself the possibility of re-narrating the dream to myself, of interpreting it properly, because it rests upon me to see the goodness. It rests upon me to realize that I am a sulam mutzav artza. To be a human being is a mixed bag. It's rooted above and it's rooted below, and each and every person has the bechira and the conditioning and the circumstances that direct which way they're going to go. There is a perpetual ascent and a descent taking place in that dreamlike perspective of reality. Those in-between souls souls that find themselves straddled between light and darkness at any moment in the battle between the Nefesh Bahamis and the Nefesh Elokus. And the secret of the Sulam is that I'm always both at the same time, because even the bottom, even the Katnas HaMoichin, even the place of unconsciousness is still going to be part and parcel of my Avodas Hashem. It's within the smallness and the nighttime that we have the ability of encountering the dream, but it's also specifically there that we have the ability of realizing that, wow, the irreducible trace of goodness and all rightness continues to exist even here. And then when we climb out of the dream and we wake up and we rub our eyes and we're able to look back on what we just perceived, we're able to understand that this too was part of the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this has a profound impact on the way that a person functions in their day-to-day lives, whether it be in recovery or whether it be in the recovery of day-to-day life. There are naturally going to be descents within each and every day. Multiple times a day, a person is going to go into that place of Vayeitzei Yaakov mi be'er shava vayilech harana, of going from that place of okayness into the place of agitation and charon af. And that's the descent from wakefulness into slumber. And the only thing that we have to do is be doresh the roshem, to search out that irreducible trace of goodness that has always already been there and will always be there and will never be erased. It's impossible to erase it because there's nothing other than goodness. Everything is goodness. Even the concealment is an expression of goodness. But if I have the eyes that understand the goodness that is inherent within the expression of negativity, so I don't deny the negativity. I don't deny the fact that I'm falling into katnas, but I'm able to look at it in a different way. And I'm able to understand that, yes, this is a process that I must go through right now. I'm going into a state of dreaming, but I hold on to the lucidity of the wakeful mind at the heart of the dream, and I can begin to dream within a dream. I can begin to uncover the secret of imagination, which is the birthplace of prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh and creativity and the confidence to stand sturdily upon our paths and Avodas Hashem, and to know that God is with us because we're with God, and to ultimately have the confidence and the humility to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with our imaginations and our ayefus and our exhaustion and our tiredness and the nocturnal reality in which we live, and this world which is Doma L'Laila. My Saba, Zchus Yogan Aleinu, who survived hell, who survived Auschwitz, who descended down into the nightmare. He would say a teaching that I also later on saw in the writings of Rav Shimon Schwab in Mayan Beis HaShoeva. But my Saba said that ultimately we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts Adam Harishon to sleep. He puts a terdema, an unconsciousness, which is the same gematria as targum of translation, a loss of meaning. And that's the state that the human being finds themselves in. But my Saba would always say that nowhere in the Torah does it say that Adam Harishon was woken up, and that there's a certain perspective of looking at Adam Harishon as we're one extension of the dream of Adam Harishon. And in the dream of Adam Harishon, we're still being mavarer. We have the ability of self-consciousness and introspection to be poiter the chalomos, to ensure that our dreams are not dreams of demonic forces that drag us down to the desires of the body and the immediate gratification that seems available in the emptiness of this world, but rather to abstract the dream and transform it and allow its imaginative quality and the freedom and the association inherent within the dream to express the possibility of thinking differently, of a new way of abstracting myself out of my stuckness and freeing myself through the utilization of imagination, which is the gateway towards prophetic inspiration and spiritual experience. And so as we enter into the Vayeitzei Yaakov mi be'er shava, we find ourselves in the month of Kislev, which is referred to as the month of slumber because the nights get longer and the darkness seems to grow, but it's specifically here that we kindle the lights. The lights of Hanukkah are the lights of a dream. It's not turning on the light to be woken up. It's the darkness of the nighttime, but the illumination of the mind in the heart of the darkness itself to illuminate the darkness. Hashem Yagia Chashki, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you take my darkness and you illuminate it. You take my slumber and you illuminate it. Ani yeshena v'libi er, I am asleep, but my heart is awake, and in the wakefulness of the heart, where a person keeps watch over that which perpetually remains, those lights of the Chanukah, of the secret of Aviv Shamar Asadavar, the Yaakov Avinu saw Yosef Atzadik descend into exile, the light of the lights at going down into concealment. But because Yaakov Avinu knew the secret of the interpretation of a dream and the secret of the Rishimu and the trace that remains after something departs, Yaakov Avinu was able to say Va'aviv Shamar Asadavar. Shamar, guarding, watching over, patiently anticipating, is the same osios as Roshem, as a trace, because it's the belief in the irreducible trace of goodness that gives us the possibility of being patient and hopeful towards the revelation of that goodness that we know is hidden in the very place that we stand. And that's what Rav Leib Eger says, that Yaakov Shamir Asadavar, Va'aviv Shamir Asadavar, meant that he looked out the window looking towards the lights of Hanukkah, looking towards the possibility of dreams and interpretation of dreams and the creativity that the dreamscape brings into a person's life, which is why Torah Sheba'al Peh starts with dreams, because Lamdus is is a dream, and Dimyon is a dream, and it's all the utilization of Leah properly and opening ourselves up to that secret portal of imagination that doesn't go down to the body, but rather brings the body up to a place of spiritual refinement. And when we can own that secret of our creativity, we can uncover the secret of the Rosham, and we can come to find that there's no such thing as Moichin Dekatnas, because if we look at Moichin Dekatnas as the absence of Molchin, as the absence of mindfulness, as being empty, then such a notion doesn't exist whatsoever. It's not a real concept, as Rav Meyer points out. But rather, Moichin Dekatnas is a form of consciousness. It's a form of attachment to God, and we have to properly learn how to traverse those areas where our relationship to God is going to be like that dreamlike scape, where I'm aware of the fact that my ladder is rooted in the ground, but it's specifically because of that I own the strength to believe that the ladder could ascend up to Shemayim as well, Be'ezras Hashem.